Good morning, everybody. You're really tall. All right, everyone, good morning. We are here to announce a 15-count indictment handed up yesterday in federal district court involving an international auto theft ring. They don't need keys and they don't need hot wiring, no smashed windows, no drama. Just a sleek electronic device called an AUTEL, A-U-T-E-L. And in under a minute, the car's brain is rewritten. The car is gone in 60 seconds. Welcome to the new world of car theft. In the dead of night, crews strike the streets in Washington, D.C., in Maryland, and in Pennsylvania. And in seconds, they reprogram Corvettes, Camaros, Honda Civics, and a Honda Civic, by the way, is the most popular stolen car in the country today. They end up reprogramming these cars to accept a blank key fob. And it's almost immediate while on the street. They literally disconnect the GPS and the Bluetooth. But this isn't joyriding. These are high-end vehicles that are then loaded on transport carriers headed to ports in Savannah and Baltimore, Maryland. But first, they are cooled off. They're cooled off where the plates are exchanged, in one place on I Street in the Navy Yard, and in another place where they swap out the plates, curiously, a parking garage at a Marriott in Maryland. From there, they are loaded onto shipping containers that are labeled furniture as opposed to cars because there will not be as much scrutiny. And then the shipping containers are sent across the ocean to Africa, where they get top dollar on the black market. This is a sophisticated ring turning everyday cars into international cargo. The cars are gone in seconds. They are stripped of their tracking devices. They are cooled off where their plates are switched. They are transported and funneled to ports, and in sealed containers, they're shipped across the ocean to Africa, where demand is sky high and profits are enormous. In this indictment, we've identified over 20 cars with an estimated street value of just under $1 million. But law enforcement is continuing to investigate the fact that this ring may be involved in the theft of more than 100 vehicles in D.C. and more than 30 more vehicles in Prince George's County, Maryland, that is valued at up to $4 million. The individuals whose indictments have been unsealed at this point are Jacob Hernandez, David Kobe, Dustin Wetzel, Chance Clark, and James Young. The crimes that are involved are conspiracy to possess, sell, or transport a stolen vehicle, 18 U.S.C. 371. Possession, receipt, or storage of a stolen vehicle, 18 U.S.C. 2313. The interstate transportation of stolen vehicles, 18 U.S.C. 2312, and first-degree theft under the D.C. Code, aiding and abetting, and all of these vehicles, of course, are subject to forfeiture at the end. I'd like to now call on Mayor Muriel Bowser to get her comments on this.
Thank you, Judge. I want to thank Judge Pirro. I want to thank the men and women of the Metropolitan Police Department and all of our federal and regional law enforcement officials who have been involved in this investigation, these arrests, and we're looking forward to the prosecution of these crimes. And I want to thank our U.S. prosecutor, Jeanine Pirro, who has been dogged in Washington, D.C. in attacking violent crime, property crime, quality of life crimes that affect the residents and businesses of the District of Columbia. So I want to thank you for that, Judge. I also want to say that this problem of motor vehicle theft has been vexing, especially over the last couple of years where we have seen spikes in auto theft. And for even the several years before that, we have been very focused in the district on educating our neighbors, on encouraging anti-theft devices, on making sure that our neighbors and businesses are armed with cameras, and that our police department is working in coordination with the region to make sure we are attacking these crimes. Just yesterday, the chief and I walked through a ward for a neighborhood where neighbors are concerned about auto vehicle break-ins and auto theft. So we know that when any type of crime happens, even a property crime, it affects people's peace and enjoyment of their homes, their neighborhoods, and their sense of public safety. So we know that this ring is attached to at least 100 car thefts in the district, and that these car thefts have happened over the course of many months, and our officers and detectives have been dogged in finding the perpetrators of these crimes. Motor vehicle thefts are already down 57% this year, and I hope that this means that we will continue to see steep declines. Most of these thefts happened more than a year ago, but our detectives kept at it even when the public's attention moved on. MPD is working to resolve these cases. Now we're here today, and that's also how we got to an 85% homicide closure rate last year. Our detectives, our federal partners, our crime lab, all working together to make sure we're taking perpetrators off the streets. And we will continue to work to get all levels and all types of crime down in our city. So I'm very grateful to the chief and to our prosecutors and our federal team. Thank you. Chief.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Good morning. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Judge Pirro. I'm Jeff Carroll, the Interim Chief of the Metropolitan Police Department. I'm joined here today by Assistant Chief Ramey Kyle of our Investigative Services Bureau, Commander Matthew Fitzgerald of our Violent Crime Suppression Division, and Detective David Wilkes of our District Investigations Division. First, I want to begin by providing updates on the two shootings that occurred overnight. We responded to a shooting in the 600 block of Kenyon Street shortly before 11 p.m. last night. An adult female was sadly pronounced deceased. Currently, we are searching for a 2-year-old missing child, Royce Hawkins. We have posted his image on social media, and we pushed it out via Amber Alerts to everyone's phone here in the city. Please, if you have any information related to the whereabouts of Royce, please call us immediately. We'll continue to provide updates on this case throughout the day. Additionally, yesterday evening at approximately 7 p.m., we responded to the 1300 block of Morris Road Southeast. We believe this is another domestic-related situation where the suspect in this case shot his former girlfriend and another man in the vehicle before taking his own life. Obviously, our thoughts and prayers with the families that are impacted by both of these tragic events, and we'll continue to provide you updates on them. Now, regarding the arrest that we're announcing this morning, beginning in February 2025, Detective Wilkes began investigating a pattern of vehicle thefts in Northwest DC, mainly centered on our 3rd and 4th districts. The pattern involved vehicles that were parked and locked on residential streets that were being stolen in the middle of the night. The suspects used lockpicks, electronic devices, as the judge mentioned, the Altel devices, to reprogram key fobs and to access vehicles. They would then quickly move the vehicles off into parking garages in DC and in the surrounding areas. At the garages, the suspects would then swap out license plates, they would change the VIN numbers, and they would disable the GPS tracking devices in these vehicles. Our investigation revealed that this group worked to transport many of these stolen vehicles out of the country. Vehicles were moved through at least 3 ports up and down the East Coast, including Savannah, Georgia, Baltimore, Maryland, and Newark, New Jersey. Vehicles that were stolen here in DC were located as far away as Western Africa. As Detective Wilkes uncovered the size of this criminal ring, we engaged our partners at the United States Attorney's Office, the FBI's Washington and Baltimore field offices, and the Prince George's County Police Department. So far, we've connected these suspects to 117 vehicle thefts that occurred in 2025 in the district. To put that number in perspective, that would account for 20% of all the motor vehicle thefts in the city so far this year. We believe these suspects are connected to additional crimes, and we're following up on many more cases. This is just the latest example of how the Metropolitan Police Department, along with our law enforcement partners, continue to work tirelessly to hold those who prey on our community accountable. No matter where the investigation takes us, we will not stop to deliver justice to DC residents. And I'll now turn it back over to the FBI.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. Good morning. I'm Jeff Tyler, Special Agent in charge of FBI's Washington Field Office Criminal Division. WFO is proud to work alongside our partners at MPD and investigators at the U.S. Attorney's Office to take down this prolific car theft ring. By surging resources alongside our federal and local partners and executing federal search warrants, on criminals such as these, we are aggressively reducing crime in our communities. Some of the resources the FBI brought to this case included technical assistance, surveillance, international coordination, and assistance in executing yesterday's arrest and search warrants. The arrest and indictments of these subjects are a testament to how much that we can achieve when we leverage our partnerships to reduce crime. These criminals are now behind bars and won't be stealing cars off the streets of DC and Maryland and shipping them halfway across the world. In addition to MPD and the U.S. Attorney's Office, I want to thank the FBI's Baltimore and Atlanta field offices who assisted in this operation, as well as the FBI's law enforcement attaché in Accra, Ghana, as well as our partners in PG County. We are committed to continued collaboration with our partners in sharing crucial intelligence and pooling our resources to dismantle criminal organizations to safeguard the National Capital Region. I'll now turn the podium back over to Judge Pirro.
As the mayor indicated, this is all about a joint collaboration between law enforcement agencies here. And the relationship that the U.S. Attorney's Office has with the Metropolitan Police Department is a terrific one. But there is one individual and one group that I neglected to mention, and that's my own investigators in the United States Attorney's Office. Matt Fox-Moles, who is with us here today, he and his team work tirelessly on this as well. You know, these are big cases, and you heard from all of us that it doesn't take just one person. It can't. It is a collaboration, and we are so proud of the work that we do together, and we're proud of each other. Now, have any questions?
Judge, so I just went on Amazon. I can pick this up for $500.
What? The Autel?
What's that? Yes.
Oh, great. Thanks for telling us.
So I'm just wondering, do you think that there's a need to have these devices regulated? There has been some effort around the country to that end to try to have these only available to licensed locksmiths and law enforcement.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. But if you have a device like this that plugs into the OBD2 in a vehicle, that you shouldn't have that unless you have a legitimate reason. If you're in the business of making sure that of registering cars or licensing cars or repairing cars, that's one thing. But to be able to buy this on your own, I think there definitely has to be some kind of legislation or registering. Yes.
Just follow up on that, Judge. Is there like a learning lesson? Because it seems pretty sophisticated what they're doing to just use this and clear out cars. Is there a learning lesson for DC drivers, to keep in mind to protect their cars? And can you kind of just tell us what photos we're looking at to kind of narrate the picture? These are cars that you've been able to get be cleared and shipped away, or? Yes.
These cars here, I think some of them are Hondas. They are literally being transported to the ports. And because first they go to the garage, or to a location, I Street, the Navy Yard, and then they end up going to the port, and then they're put on a container. You can see a Honda right there, which is in a shipping container that is going on the high seas. So, what can people do about their cars? Chief, I might ask you to answer that.
No, yes, ma'am. Yeah, no, a couple things. So a couple things we recommend is folks who do have the key fobs use a Faraday bag. It's a bag that prevents the electronic from emanating from the key. The other thing is old school things. We pushed really hard last year and the year before when we had the increase in stolen autos about the club. Manual devices that actually lock the steering wheel, that even if you have an Autel device, you won't be able to drive that car because you have that. So I know a lot of people think those things are outdated, but they're not. They are good devices that prevent vehicles from still being driven, even if someone changes that. So those are some of the things you can do. Also, things like air tags in the car, we've given those away before. So if your vehicle is stolen, we have an idea where it's at. And there are a lot of different programs that are out there as far as GPS in the vehicles, some of which in these cases, of course, were disabled. But those are some of the definite things. But, sometimes you have to revert back to our more older procedures like the club, which has been very successful. And the city gave out several of those throughout the year last year to try to combat some of these issues.
That's great.
It's a great question.
Yeah, it is. Yes, sir.
Thanks, Judge. As a follow-up to the question about Autel, you talked about engagement with other FBI field offices. You've talked about other ports, even outside of the DC Baltimore area, being used. How much of a national problem are you seeing with the use of these devices to be used for stealing cars? And then I have an off-topic question.
I can't tell you exactly what the national problem is, but I can tell you that these are old crimes being committed in new ways. There is always a desire for a car and getting your hands on a vehicle that you can't afford. This is something that I did 30 years ago when I was DA. I mean, the cars they were put on a rail across the country and then taken to the West Coast and then shipped to China. So this is nothing new. And I imagine that with the increase in the ability to steal these vehicles, if you don't have what the chief has just spoken about, then there is going to be a clear increase across the country.
Absolutely. No, and I would just say, while it doesn't appear to be part of this ring's intent, we always focus on stolen automobiles because they can be used in other very serious crimes. And that's why we always have attention to that. And we always, like when our prosecutor says stealing cars is not joyriding. It's a serious crime, and it's a serious crime that can lead to more serious crimes.
If I could ask my off-topic question. Yes,
Not off topic.
Well, yes.
Let's finish this.
Well,
Anybody else? Yes. Well, I'll get to you.
So you mentioned this was last
Go
year,
ahead.
but in the past several years, we were reporting on an increased carjacking and
Yes.
other issues. Is this really connected to that, or this is a totally
Chief.
separate thing?
Yeah, so this would be separate, I would say, overall, because carjackings are when somebody's actually in the car or projection of the actual vehicle there. These are people that are parked cars, and then they're using devices to pick, get inside, and then reprogram. So kind of do two different things. But with that being said, majority of the cases that we see, we talk about homicide cases, robbery cases, they're using stolen vehicles, as the mayor mentioned, to go around commit these other crimes. So even though these cars may not be taken in carjackings from someone's possession, taking a stolen car and using them, they're usually used for those purposes because it's much more difficult to then locate and identify the suspect who committed those kinds of crimes.
You talk about protecting the key fob. The key fob could be in your home.
Yes.
What do these people need to be in order to?
So you can steal the signal from the key fob. That's why the Faraday bags are used. You can also actually, if you get inside, plug in to the port as the judge mentioned, and also reprogram it that way, right? So that's why keeping the keys away from other things so you can't snatch that signal is one way to do it. Plugging it in the port is another way to do it. So the way for that is to use like a club or another locking device for the steering wheel that prevents the actual moving of the steering of the car.
Can I also ask, are any of the victims looking at possibly getting their vehicles back, or also are you anticipating charging anyone else in this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We're absolutely, we are in the midst of an investigation where there are another 100 vehicles that we're looking at. I mean, this is just the beginning. And I suspect that it's going to be a much bigger case. Now that we've got 6 defendants, there's no question that we will be digging deeper. Yes, sir.
2 questions, one on topic and then fourth one. The shippers, like obviously these cars don't just end up in Africa.
They don't? Where are they going?
Well, I mean, but I'm just saying, like, what is going to happen to the shippers that either might knowingly or unknowingly ship these cars?
Well, the question is whether or not we've got a conspiracy, and whether or not we can prove that they were aiding and abetting this ring. And if we can prove that, we absolutely will. But the issue is whether or not these guys who are stealing the vehicles are the ones who are labeling the containers, and what role the people who are actually shipping the containers have in terms of the labeling. I mean, there's a lot more peeling of the onion that we have to do. But if we think that they're part of it, we'll go after them as well. There's no question we will. Not off topic. Go ahead.
You mentioned that there was somewhere on I Street in Navy Yard that a cooling off was happening. Can you give more information? Is this a parking garage? Is this?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit. I won't give the exact
Yeah.
address, but it's a location. It was a parking garage in the Navy Yard area of a building that was there.
And that's what a
So they were bringing it there, as the judge kind of mentioned, for a cooling off period. After they would steal them, they would bring them there, and things like changing the tags, revinning the car. So, that way it wouldn't be known that the cars are stolen as they put new tags, new VINs, and then work to actually get them transported out of the country. There was also no location, as was mentioned in Maryland, that they were doing that as well.
Okay.
Can you just explain what that box is?
Is that the Altel?
That's the Autel.
Anyways.
This is the device itself. Yes, sir.
You mentioned a bunch of high-end sports cars and then said Honda Civics was
Yeah.
close by. Why Honda Civics?
It's the same question I asked. Why is Honda Civic the most popular stolen car in the United States? My understanding is that there are parts to the Honda Civics that can be used in other cars as well. Is that accurate?
That's true.
Well, then why Honda? Does anyone know?
I think it's one of those popular cars that are out there as well, right? I mean, there's a
Is
lot
it?
of them that are out there. So when you start thinking about like vehicles that can be stolen, there's a lot, and they're very popular in the market. So they're also very easy to resell. Higher-end cars draw a lot more attention, I'd say, overall. So, they're looking at both aspects of that.
And then what kind of markdown were they being sold for overseas? 'Cause
There's a markup, not a markdown, because they can't get them overseas. This thing called a tariff. That's
So
mic drop.
are you saying that did prices go up because of the tariffs? Did any of
I don't know anything about that. Oh, you want to answer that, Mayor?
I don't know anything about that.
All right. Who wants off topic?
So yesterday at the confirmation hearing for Kevin Warsh, there was
Oh,
There's a lot of-
Powell.
of course, a lot of interest in your ongoing investigation of the Federal Reserve and Chair Powell. We heard one senator refer to it as a ridiculous exercise in a circus, and we heard Senator Tillis say that he found Warsh to be qualified, but still could not support his confirmation until there was some resolution to your investigation.
Mhm.
What do you see as the next steps in your investigation? And there was also mention of the visit to the Federal Reserve construction site last week as an instance. The word that was used to describe that was doubling down on the investigation. What was the inspiration and motivation for making that visit on that particular day?
The cost overruns on that building are well over $1 billion. This investigation continues. I am in the legal lane. There are others who are in the political lane. I don't intersect those two lanes. I am going forward. We are appealing the decision of Judge Boasberg. The idea that a judge can stand at the door of a grand jury and tell a prosecutor, you're not allowed to go in, when the United States Supreme Court has said you can go into a grand jury based on rumors and suspicion, is an order that we think must be appealed. And we are continuing in this investigation. Next
What kind of
question.
conversation have you had with the administration more broadly about?
I don't need to have an investigation to know as a prosecutor what I need to do, and I'm doing it.
What do you hear
Go ahead.
about it, getting the Warsh confirmation?
The FBI director teased indictments on Fox News over the weekend. Will those indictments move through this office? And are you comfortable as a prosecutor bucking some longstanding DOJ policy and teasing any indictment that might come?
Bucking DOJ policy. I am very comfortable with this office, which, as far as I'm concerned, is the most important office in the country, given the venue, given where we're located. We are literally in the nation's capital. And anything that goes on here is subject to the jurisdiction of this office. So I have no problem going forward on cases where there are evidence. Anything else is irrelevant to me.
Judge?
Does anybody want to talk about the curfew? Does anyone want to talk about, okay, Mayor, you're up. But I want to say one more thing. The chief mentioned domestic violence. The mayor and I this week are going to be doing something very important on domestic violence. And we hope that you cover it. And I'll tell you why. Because as crime goes down in the district, we're seeing all kinds of changes. Domestic violence has an even keel. And it's not impacting the murders and the serious strangulations, et cetera. So curfew, take it away, Mayor.
Judge, can we hear from you as well
On what?
on curfew? Because you've commented on this. We understand, it's been reported that the White House is following this issue closely as well. So I think we'd like to hear from all three of you.
Good, start with the mayor.
Okay.
Cover me there.
So just to level set, the council took action yesterday on a permanent bill that couldn't come into effect until the fall. Obviously, we are concerned about this spring and summer period, which would require council emergency action. We are now operating under my authority, which is limited, to have a curfew, and we needed the council to act yesterday. They decided to punt on the legislation. And there will be a gap between when my 15-day emergency runs out and they can act again. I think what we're seeing is that there is not a debate over the merits. Now it's all political, and I think that people need to put their political ambitions to the side and do their job.
Right, Mayor.
Yes.
Do you plan on issuing another executive order to prevent any gap?
Obviously, Stephanie, we have to look at the context that we're operating in. For a mayor to declare a public safety emergency, there have to be certain criteria met.
And then in terms of the council, with the emergency bill that is in place, right? First the emergency bill and then your order. There are some noting that even though it's an important tool, these team gatherings and chaotic gatherings are happening and that may not be as effective. What do you believe is truly missing in trying to address this issue?
We're dealing with a phenomenon that's not only happening in the district, it's happening in cities around our country. We're seeing children gather in large groups, very, very destructive behavior. And my concern is if we don't send a strong message that children shouldn't be gathering in large groups, something really bad is going to happen. Yes.
I just had a follow-up question for the chief on the Amber Alert issue this morning. Can you give any more context to the incident? Is this something domestic related? Do you believe that it's a family member that may have taken the child? Anything you can elaborate on?
Yeah, so we don't have a lot of information. What we do know is we know that the victim in this case, that she was shot by an adult male. We have that based on some video evidence with that. But it took us some time to actually identify who the victim was. And then after we were able to identify who she was, we were able to determine that she did have a child and she had been with that child in the 500 block of Kenyon earlier in the evening. So we know that, at least 3 hours before that, she was with a child. We don't know who the suspect is this time. Obviously, we're continuing to canvass to interview folks. So we're continuing to investigate the homicide aspect of it, but more importantly is locating the child. We don't know if the child is with some other family member. We have made contact, of course, with the victim's family. They are not aware of the surroundings or the whereabouts of that child, but there could be another community member that's out there that has information. So anyone who saw him in the area, he's wearing a very distinctive blue and yellow striped long sleeve shirt that's out there. We've also pushed out images of him. Please contact us at 911 so we can immediately get officers out there. We have officers up in that area, canvassing now, going door to door and handing out flyers as well. We do have some information that there may be some family ties in the 5,000 block of Benning Road. So we're also looking in that area to see if there's other folks who may know his whereabouts. But this is the utmost importance to us.
I want to say something about the curfew. You're welcome. There is a huge gap in the public discussion as it relates to the curfews. The mayor and the police chief have done everything that they can. The mayor is trying to get some kind of permanency. So, as she called it, the context of calling for an emergency, isn't then diluted, where she's seen as calling for an emergency every time there is a teen takeover. Make no mistake, these teen takeovers are dangerous, they are violent, and they end up in fighting, assaults, robberies. Businesses are impacted. People's quiet enjoyment, their ability to walk on the street is impacted, even if there is no crime. The gap in the public discussion has to do with the parents and parental accountability. And I see this as an area where the family court judges, when these kids end up going into court because of their being arrested on an OAG charge, the parents or a guardian have to pick that kid up, that juvenile up. And they need to be a part of the discussion. We can enforce. Now, I can't. I'm a prosecutor. You know where I stand with these juveniles, where I want to reduce the age of accountability. But there can be penalties against the parents who know about the kids' involvement in these teen takeovers. Contributing to the delinquency of a minor is a statute that might be looked at involving the parents. We also have to leverage juvenile court authority over the parents. And until we do that, this is going to continue. The police chief is doing everything that he can. The mayor is doing everything that she can. The DC council doesn't take this stuff seriously enough. They don't take crime enough. They think teens and juveniles in this city, in this district, need to be coddled. I think the people of the district understand that that's not the case, that there is too much harm going on. And we are working as hard as we can to stop this. But until the DC council gets their act together, and the mayor was very kind the way she put it, I'm not as kind as the mayor is. They're not doing their job. They're accountable to the people of this district. They need to protect the people in this district. They need to protect other teens who may be involved in these teen takeovers and then become victims of crime themselves. We need to involve the parents, and that's my recommendation.
Can I follow up on that?
We have time
Why?
for one last
Yeah.
question.
It's a question on how that actually works if the juveniles are not picked up on the curfew. Does that mean you're only limited to any of the kids who actually commit a violent crime?
It's not a violent crime. It doesn't have to be a violent crime. Yeah, Chief, you could talk about the fact that the promoting and all the other crimes.
Yeah.
If they're not arrested or confronted for curfew, do you have any numbers on, are these kids being brought in for the curfew?
So we do have some young people that are being brought in for curfews. We don't see large numbers of them inside those areas. Typically what we see when the curfew is in effect in the limited areas is, the law requires us, they have to be in a group of 9 or more. And it requires us to provide warnings to try to gain voluntary compliance beforehand. And of course, it's limited to 8 to 11 o'clock when the regular curfew breaks in there. So if they're in violation of that, if there's a group of 9 or more, then we have to give those warnings. And what we typically see is when the warning is provided, either the juveniles, young people will break into smaller groups, or they'll go outside of those areas. So they're no longer in violation of the curfew. We have seen assaults. We've seen, of course, the incident with a gun and then down in the Navy Yard. We've seen robberies of teens by other teens that are inside of these locations that go out there. So really, what we typically see is when there is victimization, it is other young people that are being victimized with that. So by arresting them, bringing them in, yes, they would be in the system. If they're curfew violators, they would also be in the system.
But Stephanie, it should be clear that we don't want to arrest any kids. What we want their parents to supervise them and keep them at home. By the time they get into a large group at the Navy Yard or someplace else, there's already danger. And there's already danger presented for other neighborhoods in the District of Columbia because the chief has to deploy so many of his resources to babysit, supervise, or arrest children. That is not a good use of our resources. And so what we saw that was very successful when we implemented the curfew over the last year was that parents got the message. It's a tool for parents too. The parents can say, you can't go there because there's a curfew. And children avoided these areas. And so that's what we want. We don't want, anytime there is a large gathering, hundreds of kids, maybe even 1,000 kids in one place, it requires so many police resources that we're drawing from other areas, and it puts the children in more conflict with the police. I heard one of the council, and I'm gonna keep my temperature down for a reason, because then they report that she's mad. They got the ire of the mayor, but then you don't hear what I'm saying. And so I heard one of the council members say that we don't want a curfew because it means that the kids are going to be in contact with the National Guard. If you have 1,000 kids gathering across the city, they are more likely to engage with law enforcement or the National Guard than if they were in constructive environments supervised by their parents and families. Okay, this is a tool. This is a tool we need. It's time for people to put their politics to the side and listen to common sense. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Thank you.